Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The scent of freshly laundered sheets still lingered in the room as I moved about, folding clothes and placing them neatly into drawers. My mind was on the rhythm of cleaning, straightening pillows, smoothing the blanket, until a sudden warmth pressed against my back. His hand, firm yet gentle, slid across my waist, halting me mid-motion. I froze, caught between surprise and awareness, my pulse leaping against my ribs. Before I could turn, his presence loomed closer, his breath brushing against the curve of my neck. The silence in the room thickened, broken only by the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the quickening beat of my own heart. When I finally faced him, his gaze locked onto mine with a boldness that left no room for escape. There was no smile, no words, just that charged stare that made my knees feel unsteady. A teasing smirk appeared at the corner of his mouth, as if he knew exactly the effect he was having on me. "Still cleaning," he murmured, voice low and unhurried, though his tone carried more weight than the question itself. His fingertips trailed over my wrist, grazing it so lightly that it felt like sparks chasing under my skin. I tried to laugh it off, tried to step aside, but he didn't move. Instead, his nearness pressed closer, the air narrowing between us. I could hear the shift of his breath, feel the steady strength in his chest just inches from mine. Then, without warning, his arms wrapped around me, lifting me off balance. A startled gasp escaped my lips as I landed against the soft mattress, the neatly stacked clothes scattering to the floor. His shadow fell over me, his weight bracing above mine, every motion deliberate yet playful, daring me to resist, knowing I wouldn't. The room felt suspended in that moment, the chaos of fallen clothes, the rush of adrenaline, the thrill of being seen, wanted, claimed. My hands gripped the sheets, torn between protest and surrender, as his eyes held me captive with that same unspoken promise. And just as the tension reached its peak, the door creaked faintly, reminding us both that the world outside still existed. What happened next? I'll let you discover in the story. Their marriage, to the outside world, looked like a picture of stability. Friends often described them as the perfect couple, steady careers, a comfortable home, laughter shared at family dinners. Yet beneath that surface, there were quiet spaces where words often went unsaid, places where affection lingered but sometimes felt restrained. She loved him deeply, but there were moments she wondered if he truly saw her, the woman she still longed to be, not just the role she played, wife, caretaker, homemaker. Cleaning the room that afternoon had been more than a chore, it was a ritual of control, a way to fill the silence that sometimes stretched between them. He, on the other hand, carried his own silence. The weight of responsibilities pressed against him daily, making it easy to retreat behind routines. But when he looked at her, especially in stolen glances when she didn't notice, there was something restless in his eyes, desire edged with frustration, tenderness laced with hunger. That was why his sudden interruption had startled her so much. It wasn't just playfulness, it was a demand for closeness, a reminder that passion still lived between them, waiting for the right spark. The way he pinned her with his gaze was more than teasing, it carried questions he hadn't voiced. Did she still want him the way she once did? Could they bridge the distance that had slowly grown, invisible but undeniable? As she lay beneath him, her heart raced not only from the thrill of his touch but also from the confusion of what it meant. His smirk masked something deeper, a need she hadn't seen him admit aloud. She remembered nights when they'd talked until dawn, when his laughter had filled her chest with warmth, when just brushing his hand in public felt like rebellion. Where had those moments gone? The tension between them now was not just about attraction, it was about memory, longing, and fear. Fear of losing what they once had, fear of settling into comfort so deep it erased the fire. And yet, here he was, reminding her with every bold move that comfort was not the end of their story. Her fingers trembled slightly as they brushed against his shoulder, not from hesitation, but from the flood of emotions crashing together, love, desire, doubt, and a quiet hope. For a heartbeat, she allowed herself to meet his stare with equal intensity, silently daring him to keep proving that they were worth fighting for. The room was filled with an energy that was both fragile and overwhelming, balancing on the edge of something unspoken. Neither knew if the next moment would break them open or bind them tighter. And just as his hand slid across the sheets beside her, she whispered his name, half question, half plea, leaving the audience waiting to know what truth would come next. She hadn't expected the look in his eyes to stir so much inside her. It wasn't just passion, it was possession, a kind of fire she hadn't seen in a long time. But beneath that heat, there was something else, doubt. And it cut through her like a blade. Earlier that week, she had caught him scrolling through his phone, smiling faintly at a message he never explained. She hadn't asked, though the curiosity burned in her chest. Tonight, as his hand pinned hers to the sheets, the memory flickered like an ember, raising questions she wasn't sure she wanted the answers to. "Why now?" she whispered, her breath trembling, not just from his nearness but from the storm brewing between them. His gaze softened for a fraction of a second before hardening again, as though he'd heard the unspoken accusation. "Because I can't stand the distance anymore," he murmured, his lips hovering so close they threatened to silence her doubts. Her heart raced faster. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to give in, to let the intensity sweep her away. But in the back of her mind was a shadow, the memory of a colleague at her office who lingered too long in conversations, who noticed the little things her husband often overlooked. The thought of that attention, as dangerous as it was, sent a guilty shiver through her. It wasn't that she wanted anyone else. It was that she wanted him, her husband, to see her, to claim her, to remind her she was more than the routines of laundry and dishes. And now, as he leaned closer, she felt both the ache of longing and the sting of jealousy clashing in her chest. The tension was unbearable, magnetic, pulling them together while threatening to pull them apart. His fingers tightened at her waist as though he could sense the drift of her thoughts, as if daring her to look away. But she didn't. She met his stare with a boldness of her own, silently demanding the truth he wasn't giving. Every second stretched, charged with the weight of unspoken fears and forbidden temptations. They were on the edge, not just of passion, but of revelation. And then, a sharp knock at the door shattered the moment, leaving them both suspended in a silence thick with everything they hadn't said. The knock at the door went unanswered. Neither of them moved, both caught in the heat of the moment, their eyes speaking a language they hadn't used in years. The silence after that interruption only amplified the electricity between them, like a storm paused mid-thunder. Later that evening, the air outside had cooled, but inside the house the tension still burned. She found herself in the kitchen, pretending to tidy, though her mind replayed every detail of what had almost happened. When he appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, she felt the familiar tremor return. "You're avoiding me," he said, voice calm but edged with certainty. She turned, meeting his gaze, and there it was again, the pull, the inevitable closeness. He stepped forward slowly, deliberately, as if closing the distance wasn't just physical but something more dangerous. Her back brushed against the counter, leaving her no space to retreat. His hand reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was tender, but the intent behind it was not. Her breath caught as his thumb lingered near her lips, his eyes fixed on hers, dark and unflinching. The world outside, the ticking clock, the faint hum of traffic, faded until it was only the two of them in that charged bubble. She whispered, almost to herself, "This isn't fair," though she couldn't say if she meant his teasing closeness or the emotion swelling inside her. "Maybe it's exactly what we need," he replied, his voice low, wrapping around her like a secret. Every inch of space between them disappeared until she could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her chest. Her hands hovered, unsure if they should push him away or pull him closer. The conflict tore at her, but the longing was stronger. And then, just as his lips brushed the edge of hers, the sound of a phone vibrating on the counter sliced through the moment. The screen lit up with a name she didn't recognize. They both froze, their bodies still pressed together, their breaths mingling. The air was thick with everything unresolved: jealousy, hunger, fear, love. Neither of them reached for the phone. Not yet. The phone buzzed again, louder this time, rattling slightly against the countertop. Its glow cut through the darkness like a spotlight, demanding attention. She felt his chest tighten against hers, though he didn't move, didn't break their stare. Her pulse raced as if her body already knew the truth her mind refused to confront. Finally, she pushed gently against him, slipping out of his arms just enough to glance at the screen. The name, simple, unfamiliar, but glaring, sent a chill down her spine. Elena. Her breath caught. Who is she? The words cracked in the air, fragile but sharp. His jaw tightened, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. For a moment, he seemed ready to deny, to brush it aside. But then his shoulders sagged, the weight of silence too heavy to carry anymore. She's no one, he began, but the strain in his voice betrayed him. Just someone I shouldn't have been talking to. The confession landed harder than any denial could have. Her heart lurched, torn between fury and devastation, yet the fire in her chest wasn't only anger, it was something messier, more dangerous. The same man who now stood guilty before her was still the one whose touch moments ago had made her knees tremble. Talking, she whispered, voice trembling. Or more than that? His silence was its own answer. He stepped closer, desperation flickering in his eyes. I never stopped wanting you. Not once. But I was lost. I needed to feel seen, and he cut himself off, as though even speaking the name aloud was too much. Her breath came ragged, 1,000 emotions crashing inside her. Betrayal burned hot, yet beneath it was something even more unbearable, the longing she still felt for him, the undeniable pull of his body only inches away. You broke us, she said, tears welling, though her voice carried steel. I can fix it, he whispered, stepping close enough that the heat of him pressed against her again. His hand hovered near hers, not daring to touch, waiting for permission he wasn't sure he deserved. If you'll let me prove it. The room seemed to spin. Rage told her to shove him away, but her body betrayed her, heart hammering, breath shallow, drawn toward him even now. She hated him. She needed him. Both truths burned equally. Her fingers twitched, brushing his hand for the briefest second before she snatched them back. The intensity between them threatened to collapse everything: love, lies, lust, loyalty. And just as his lips parted to plead again, the phone buzzed once more. This time, it wasn't her name on the screen. It was his. Her eyes widened. She reached for it with trembling hands, flipping it over before he could stop her. The name flashing there was hers. A message. From her own phone. Her blood ran cold. Someone else was pulling the strings. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the glowing screen. Her own name. Her own number. A message that shouldn't exist. The words were simple, yet they shattered everything around her. Do you really know him? She dropped the phone onto the counter as if it had burned her. The sound echoed in the kitchen, sharp and final. His face paled, confusion mixing with guilt. For once, he looked just as lost as she felt. What is this? She demanded, her voice breaking into a shout. If you've been lying, if you've been pulling me into this mess, I don't know, he cut in, his voice raw, almost desperate. I swear, I don't know how that message got here. But yes, I've made mistakes. His hand raked through his hair, his chest heaving. I talked to her. I let myself slip. But I didn't cross that line. I couldn't. Because no matter what, it's always been you. Her body shook with rage and heartbreak, but the conviction in his voice chipped away at her fury. She wanted to believe him, wanted to cling to the truth that he still chose her. And yet the betrayal hung heavy, undeniable. Tears spilled over as she slammed her palm against the counter. You don't get to say it's always been me after what you've done. You don't get to break me and then pretend words will fix it. He closed the gap between them, his hand gripping her wrist, not forceful, but firm, grounding. His eyes burned, not with arrogance, but with pleading. Then tell me how to fix it. Tell me what it takes. I'll fight for us, even if you hate me right now. I'll fight because I refuse to lose you. Her chest ached at his words. Anger still boiled inside her, but beneath it was the truth she couldn't escape. She still loved him, still wanted him, even when she wanted to hate him. That was the cruelest part of all. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered, her voice trembling like glass. Then let me prove myself until you can. His hands slid from her wrist to her fingers, intertwining them gently, as though holding on without caging her. For a long moment, they stood like that, rage, love, betrayal, longing, all colliding in the charged silence. She didn't move away. She didn't move closer either. But when her tears finally slowed, she allowed her hand to stay in his. The storm wasn't over. But maybe, just maybe, they had survived the worst of it. And as the phone on the counter buzzed one last time, neither of them reached for it. The phone kept buzzing, an unwelcome reminder of shadows that had threatened to tear them apart. But this time, they both ignored it. Instead, his thumb brushed softly against her knuckles, a touch so simple, yet it held more meaning than any words could. She looked at him through tear-filled eyes, exhaustion written across her face. I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if you'll drift again, she whispered. He stepped closer, his forehead lowering until it rested against hers. His voice cracked as he spoke, raw and unguarded. Then don't wonder. Hold me to it. I'll stumble, I'll fail, but I'll always come back to you. You're not just my wife, you're my home. Her breath shuddered as the wall she'd built inside her began to crumble. All the hurt was still there, yes, but so was every memory, the laughter, the late-night talks, the way he used to kiss her hand when no one was watching. Slowly, she let her free hand rise to his cheek, her fingers brushing against the roughness of his jaw. You broke my heart, she said softly, but her touch lingered. Now you'll have to be the one to heal it. He closed his eyes, relief flooding him, and pressed her hand tighter against his face. Gladly, he whispered. The world seemed to still around them as he leaned in, not with the urgency of earlier but with a tenderness that carried the weight of his promise. Their lips met in a kiss that was neither rushed nor restrained. It was steady, deliberate, a kiss of rebuilding. Every second stretched like a vow, binding them not in perfection, but in choice. When they finally parted, both were breathless, not from passion alone, but from the fragile hope that had taken root again. She let out a shaky laugh, her first in hours, and leaned into his chest. His arms wrapped around her, holding her as though he'd never let go again. The phone buzzed once more on the counter, but this time, it no longer mattered. Whatever shadows had tried to step between them would face them both together. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, wrapped in each other's arms, two broken halves choosing to become whole again. And for the first time in a long while, she believed they could.